GearNetwork.com.
This is a Gear Network production.
Broadcasting worldwide on GearNetwork.com, sharing wrestling news and opinions. It's Talking Wrestling, and your host, JC.
And hello again, wrestling fans. Welcome to the Talking Wrestling Podcast right here on the Gear Radio Network. How's it going? This is a preseason edition, if you will, of the Talking Wrestling Podcast. And my name is John Cimino, a.k.a. JC Money, here with you. And I am talking some wrestling today. I'm talking specifically Superfly, Jimmy Snuka. But first, I'm going to talk to you about our sponsor. It is shopgear.com. If you visit shopgear.com, that is in place of gearnetwork.com/Amazon, by the way. But if you visit shopgear.com, it will take you right directly to the Amazon site, and you can do all of your Amazon shopping there. The difference is using my link versus using regular Amazon is you're telling Amazon that we in Gear Network referred you to them, and they reward us handsomely with a nice small percentage, few bucks here and there to help these podcasts coming. It truly does help because it has helped, and I'll go ahead and I'll lower the music now, but I can tell you truthfully that it has helped with making significant upgrades for the studio and for Gear Network. In fact, right now, I am recording Talking Wrestling at a different location. Right now, in a rainy park, because I just felt compelled to record and talk to you all about some pro wrestling, see how you're doing, and just kind of give you some thoughts on the WWE Hall of Famer, Jimmy Superfly Snuka. Now, it's controversial, of course, but I'll get into that a little bit later on. Jimmy Superfly Snuka passed away on Sunday, January 15, 2017, after a lengthy battle with stomach cancer. Born James Rainier in 1943, he was credited with introducing the high-flying style to the WWE in the early 1980s. He debuted in 1968 after battling the uncertainty of whether or not he'd make it a living as a bodybuilder, which, if you saw Jimmy in his younger days, he probably could have made a living as a bodybuilder. His debut match was against Maxwell Bunny Butler in 1970, and he was using the moniker Jimmy Kealoha, Kealoha. In that time, he traveled to several NWA territories, winning different tag team championships with different partners and feuding with the likes of a young Jesse Ventura and Jack and Jerry Briscoe. On September 1st, 1979, Snuka defeated Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, before he was the Dragon, he was just Ricky Steamboat, to win the NWA United States Championship. In 1982, he joined the World Wrestling Federation as a heel, and he was managed by Captain Lou Albano, and initially he was Albano's man to challenge Bob Backlund for the WWE Championship. He had several shots at MSG, he lost them all, but because of his athletic style, Snuka found that he was being cheered instead of booed. So later on that year, the original Nature Boy, Buddy Rogers, came out and told Jimmy Snuka that Captain Lou Albano was cheating him out of money, which prompted Snuka to fire Albano, thus becoming a babyface in the process. The highlight of his first tenure there, everybody talks about, is a couple of different highlights there. I mean, Jimmy was larger than life as far as that goes. He could have very well been Hulk Hogan before Hulk Hogan got there. But the main highlight that everybody talks about is the top rope splash from the cage at Madison Square Garden against Don the Magnificent Morocco. It was cited as an inspiration for such names as Mick Foley, The Sandman, Tommy Dreamer, Bubba Ray Dudley, and it served as the focal point for those guys to aggressively pursue pro wrestling. Because of that, as well as some of the other matches he had, he was named Victory Magazine Wrestler of the Year in 1983. Victory Magazine, of course, the precursor to WWE Magazine. In 1984, he started a legendary feud with Roddy Piper. It started with the infamous coconut being smashed over his head in Piper's pit, and then there were a series of matches between Piper and Snuka, both as individuals and in a tag team, Piper teaming with Cowboy Bob Orton, and Snuka teaming with his storyline nephew, the Tonga Kid. He left the WWE in 1985 and worked New Japan for a little bit, and then AWA, came back to the States for a bit, but then he returned to the WWE in 1989. A little bit of buzz with his return, but he was more of an enhancement talent. At this point, he was putting over the younger crop, the Mr. Perfects of the world, the Rick Rudes of the world, and he's most known during that second stint with the WWE as being The Undertaker's first victory at WrestleMania 7. The Undertaker, of course, had the legendary 21-0 streak before it was snapped by Brock Lesnar, while the one in 21-0, the very first one, was Jimmy Snuka. His last recorded match during that stint was a loss to Shawn Michaels. In 1992, he joined the brand new Eastern Championship Wrestling, which was then promoted by Todd Gordon before Paul Heyman got there and changed it to Extreme Championship Wrestling. And for his efforts, he became the first ECW heavyweight champion. And it is noted in the title history on WWE.com. In 1993, he returned to the WWE, but that return only lasted about 3 weeks. He came in, he wrestled Brian Christopher at a house show. A couple of days later, he made his Monday Night Raw return. He defeated Phil Apollo. And then the week after that, he was in the Intercontinental Championship Battle Royal, which was ultimately won by Razor Ramon and Rick Martel. And then from there, he was done. He was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 1996 and received a Lifetime Achievement Award from WWE in 2002. He's had sporadic appearances since then in WWE throughout really the remainder of his life. The thing that I will remember about Jimmy Snuka more than just the memories that he gave me on TV is the memories that he gave me working with him in a locker room. In 2007, Jimmy Snuka was a name that that Next Era Wrestling wanted to bring in to draw some fans to their Fatal Attraction show. Problem was they didn't have an opponent for him. So initially, they were going to put him against me, the Superfly versus the Super Money Splash. Side note, while I did a frog splash during my wrestling days, I named it the Super Money Splash in honor of Jimmy Snuka because I wanted it to kind of sound similar to the Superfly Splash, but not as pretty as the Superfly Splash, but it was a frog splash, so it was something entirely different. In any event, I wrestled. I ended up becoming a tag team match because we ended up getting Tito Santana as well. So it was Tito Santana and Jimmy Superfly Snuka against JC Money and Tiger Smith, also known as Team F View. And in that match, it was interesting to say the very least. Jimmy had his own way of doing things, and even at the age of 63, I think at that point, he was 63 years old, he still got the pop, The crowd knew who he was, and for someone like me, for someone like Tiger, and I believe we might have even mentioned that in the promo, but anybody that, grew up in, in the inner city or whatever, Snuka was looked at as a hero. It was always Jay Snuka, you know what I mean? More recently, as I was discussing my youngest daughter's jumping off of the arm of a couch and Superfly splashing me, I referenced her as looking like Jay Snuka in the air. So that just goes to show you the cred that Jimmy Snuka had and what he meant to a young generation. But even more than that, it was not so much the memory of being in the ring against him or the subsequent Applebee's trip afterward where he bought me quite a few coconut rum shots and we did shots and shot the breeze and he found out I was a Roddy Piper fan. And yeah, thanks for that, Tiger, you asshole. But it wasn't so much that as much as it was a year later in 2008. Now, mind you, I didn't think Jimmy would remember who I was. But we were working at another show in Lockport, New York. And it was the show that I teamed with Mark Mandrake against the Davidsons. Jimmy Snuka was the main event that evening. And Mandrake and myself versus the Davidsons I think were the first half main event. Prior to going out there, though, I sought Jimmy out, and I asked him, I said, Jimmy, listen, I don't know if they're paying you to do the Superfly. I use a frog splash as my finishing move. If they are paying you to do the Superfly, I'll do something else to finish my match. I don't want to do the same move as you out of respect to you. And he looked at me and he goes, brother, aren't you the money man? And I looked at him and I was like, yeah, that's my name. That's my character. And he goes, then go out and make your money. Do the splash, brother. You have the Superfly blessing. And I'm like, okay, cool. Superfly gave me the in that particular match, I jumped off and rotated midway through the air to do the splash. I got as much height as I possibly could, and I felt good about it because Jimmy Snuka gave me his blessing, and that is something that stuck with me, is that he was like he who reached the highest plateau and was who he was in the wrestling business. Now, I'm not talking about the personal stuff. I'm talking about the wrestling business aspect of it. Looks at this guy, remembered who I was, and told me flat out, make your money. This is a this is a business. And George the Animal Steel told me the same thing when I talked to him at Frontier Field years later. And I told him the story, and he was like, well, this is a business. He goes, I don't know what the young kids do or why the young kids get so mad about that, but if that's your way of making money, go make your money, because we're all in it for the same reason. Essentially, is what George the Animal Steel told me, and that's what Jimmy Snuka essentially was telling me. So to hear that Jimmy Snuka passed away, those of us that followed him and followed the story and everything as far as his illness was concerned, we knew it was coming, so it wasn't so much a shock like Roddy Piper's was when Piper passed away. That to me, like, that was just an overwhelming shock when Piper passed away. But when Snuka passed away, it was more along the lines of, cancer's a son of a bitch, is what it is. And I don't like it. I don't like cancer. And I've seen what it does personally and firsthand. I'm seeing it right now with a close friend of mine. But to see what it's doing, to see what it does to people, now that Jimmy is passed, he's no longer suffering as far as that goes. And that is, I don't want to say comforting, but in the same, it makes you feel a little better about that. Anybody that has suffered from cancer or knows somebody suffering from cancer certainly knows what I'm saying. And then you get the people out there that like to tie in Jimmy Snuka's personal situation, which, for those that are not aware, he was accused of killing his girlfriend in 1983. Recently, the murder charges surfaced back up or something like that. There was a breakthrough in the case or something to that effect that brought the trial back to life. Jimmy Snuka was deemed incompetent, pretty much. Like he was going through dementia. He didn't remember any of that stuff. He would be incompetent to standing trial. And ultimately, what ended up happening was, based on the lack of evidence, along with Jimmy's medical condition, the case was dropped. So, not necessarily dropped, he was found not guilty. The court of public opinion is something that, you can't change one's perspective, I mean, and I'm not praising Jimmy Snuka for his hand in what happened to that young lady in 1983. It was an unfortunate circumstance. It really was an unfortunate situation. Nobody had to die. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, that is not up to me or anybody else to judge, because at this point it passed through the legal system and they deemed him innocent. Now, if you want to compare Jimmy Snuka's case to the case of O.J. Simpson, whom also went through and passed the legal proceedings and was found innocent, even though he did it. That's a more accurate comparison, I think, than comparing what Jimmy Snuka did, allegedly, to what Chris Benoit did factually. Those two stories are not the same at all. So I want everybody that's listening that's thinking, well, JC, how are you going to talk crap about Chris Benoit and then, talk lovingly, if you will, about Jimmy Snuka when Snuka did this? Again, it's the allegedly thing. It's the same way that O.J. Simpson fans, USC fans, Buffalo Bill fans still wear O.J. Simpson's jersey. Hey, man, he was innocent. Court of law. They deemed him innocent. The court of public opinion, unfortunately, is going to look negatively on Jimmy Snuka. It looks negatively on everybody in any of these situations. And I'm not excusing, and I don't want anybody to misconstrue this. I'm not excusing what Jimmy Snuka may or may not have done to contribute to that young lady's death back in the 80s. I am not excusing that at all. That is inexcusable. What I am saying is when you, the wrestling fan, the wrestling mark, the smark, or whatever, try to draw a comparison to the situation that legitimately and factually happened with Chris Benoit, whom killed his child and killed his wife before he killed himself. To me, that is you, the smart mark fan, or the uneducated fan, grasping at straws, trying to stir up heat on the internet or make it seem like you know more than you do. I can respect Jimmy Snuka's legacy because he was a wealth of knowledge and he provided me with some of that in my interactions with him. I respect Chris Benoit's wrestling work. Okay? But unfortunately for Chris Benoit, he was guilty as charged. I mean, he was dead. He didn't have to stand trial or anything, but he was guilty. So WWE couldn't possibly honor him in the way that Chris Benoit fans want him to be honored. He can't possibly do that because the last memory was national and, dare say, worldwide news of this wrestler going crazy and killing his kid and his wife and himself in the process. If it turned out something, if it turned out that, it sounds graphic, I know, but if it turned out that Benoit, somebody broke in and shot Benoit and killed him and killed his family, if Benoit was not at fault for the death of himself, his wife, and his kid, this would be a different story. There would be a posthumous Benoit Hall of Fame induction, and it would have already happened by now. But the fact that Benoit was directly responsible for it, there was facts and evidence that proved it, Benoit will never see the light of day for the Hall of Fame. He will never see the light of day for the WWE Hall of Fame. And again, this Jimmy Snuka thing, while inexcusable for his hand in it, quite literally, it was not to the degree of Chris Benoit. He was unfortunately not found at fault for that. He was also inducted into the Hall of Fame before the second situation rose up with him towards the end of his life. Similar to O.J. Simpson, he was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame before the Nicole Brown incident happened, and they're not going to remove him from that. Same thing, WWE's not going to remove him from the Hall of Fame. They're not going to not acknowledge him for that. In the law's eyes, Jimmy Snuka was innocent. In the fans' eyes, you're going to have to understand and deal with that and respect the grieving families of all parties in this situation. Basically, what I'm saying is stop being dickheads. Someone's father died. Someone's grandfather died. Someone's uncle died. And yes, to the victim's family, the Snuka's victim, his ex-girlfriend, someone's little girl died. You know what? Instead of pointing fingers and being assholes about it, why don't you send some positive vibes to the people who were impacted that were innocent in all of this, in that entire situation? That's what you should be doing. That's the more human thing to do. In any event, Jimmy, thank you very much for the knowledge, for the memories that you've given me, both as a kid watching you on TV and as a kid in the wrestling business, learning from you the few times that I shared the locker rooms with you, and the memory of the dinner table when you found out I was a Roddy Piper fan and you threatened to stick your finger up my rear end. Again, thank you, Tiger Smith, for telling him that, you dumbass. We'll be right back after this commercial break with some wrestling news and some local talking IWF a little bit later on this month. I'll give you the match rundown as I see it right now in front of my face, and we will return after these messages. Safe home, Jimmy Snuka. We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, John Cimino here for the Gear Radio Network, and you have asked and asked repeatedly, what is up with the app? We know you have one, and you never push it, you never do anything with it. Well, guess what? We got a better one, and it is free. It is absolutely available for you, and there's so much more you can do with it. Visit GearNetwork.com and click Get the App. It's up on the top banner, or if you're feeling really brave, head to gearnetwork.mobapp.at on your mobile phone and your mobile phone's browser, and you can take Gear Network with you wherever you go. Listen to every show on the Gear Network right from the app. You can view all of our social networks in real time. You can read Gear Network and BLTDsports.com blogs in real time. And you can also shop Amazon and help us out and help you out. It is free. Did I mention that? Again, GearNetwork.com or GearNetwork.mobapp.at. Download it right now.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am Mr. Gabriel Soul.
And I'm Pat G.
The G stands for gangster. And you are listening to the Turnbuckle Talk Radio Podcast, baby.
Every week live and exclusively on the Gear Network,
where we talk about indie wrestling, national wrestling, WWE, TNA, ROH, every single independent wrestling scene that we get information on, plus our opinions on such.
Find it only on the Gear Network app, iTunes, and more.
You always got to go to GearNetwork.com to tune in and listen to my voice every single week, because I know you love it. And the reason why is because you get eargasms, baby.
And if you want those eargasms, tune in every week. Otherwise, we only have one word for you.
Cyclone!
This portion of the Talking Wrestling podcast is sponsored by our store through Amazon. If you visit shopgear.com, that's right, shopgere.com, it's going to take you right directly to Amazon, and you will be able to do all of your shopping as you normally would. The difference is, if you go to Amazon using shopgear.com as opposed to regular Amazon, you will be telling Amazon that we referred you, and that helps us out tremendously. Amazon kicks us back a little something to help out with production costs, which keeps this podcast that you love listening to for free, and the guests coming on and the wrestling knowledge coming your way. Now, shopgear.com. Do that after this podcast. And now, back to the show. And welcome back with the Royal Rumble a couple of weeks away. Now we talk a little bit about the Royal Rumble rumors here. Shawn Michaels has said that there is no itch to return to the WWE in an active competitor role. Now, there has been talk ever since the Royal Rumble has been announced as being from San Antonio, Texas, the home of the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels, that Shawn was going to participate. And it was further, instigated, I guess, by a picture that AJ Styles posted of AJ versus Shawn Michaels, what if, or something like that. I mean, I would love to see AJ versus Shawn Michaels, but it's very, very, very clear that Shawn Michaels has no desire to be like a lot of the people before him who have retired and then come back and then retired again. Terry Funk, Hulk Hogan, I mean, pretty much everybody, He does not have that desire to do it, so he's not going to do it. So he's not going to be involved in the Royal Rumble. The Undertaker, however, is. And he will be in the Royal Rumble. Now, the speculation with The Undertaker is that, he's... Originally, they were talking about he was possibly going to win that Royal Rumble and go on to wrestle the champion and retire, or somehow find the way to get the title on him and then have Cena and him battle. But now it appears that all signs are pointing to an Undertaker-Braun Strowman match at WrestleMania, and I expect that at the Royal Rumble, that particular storyline is going to begin. Chris Jericho has revealed the original WrestleMania 32 plans for last year, which was to set up his heel turn. He said, quote, "I knew from the moment I came out what was going to happen, which was me eventually turning heel. It got pushed back a little bit because the AJ Styles thing worked so well, so Vince wanted us to be a tag team and then work at WrestleMania. The original plan was for me to work with Ambrose at WrestleMania. Of course, Ambrose ended up wrestling Brock Lesnar that show." Furthering the quote, "I started planting those seeds as a babyface that were really pissing people off, and I knew it. And it was fun for me to see them say, Jericho's done, this is stale, he's so stale. That scarf and the vest, he looks ridiculous, it's the same old catchphrase, and he's trying to get a Rudy Tooty booty chant going, and it's so annoying. It's sad to see Jericho falling so low." And I was like, you guys are just
I'm the master of the puppets yet again, manipulating the entire business into planting those seeds for when I finally turned heel. And people were like, well, we're glad he turned heel because he wasn't doing a good job as a babyface. But I knew that is the one thing that I had planned. He then gives credit to the list, the quote-unquote list, to his co-writer Jimmy Jacobs. He was apparently the creator of the list of Jericho, and that he gives him credit for that too. But you know what, Jericho, I could tell what he was doing, and a lot of people that probably were involved in the business, or even just as a fan that have watched it for a long time and have seen these things, you know, a good worker knows what he's doing, and Jericho quite literally is the best, one of the best ever. He definitely is top 5. So that was really cool to hear that, and of course see that, and look at how well it's getting. You know how well his run has been, recently winning the United States Championship and going there. Now I think that the seeds have been planted for Jericho versus Owens at WrestleMania, but you know what, I appreciate Jericho's run for what it is, because you don't know when it's going to end and when he's going to go back on tour doing his Fozzy thing and how much longer he has. I mean, he's 45 years old, I believe. So, you know, enjoy it. He's doing some of his best work that he's ever done, and that's saying something. More on the rumor mills. The Hardys are on the WWE's radar again. The WWE apparently has interest in wanting to bring them back. However, according to sources closest to the Hardys, they feel that their best deal is to stay with TNA. Now, they have 2 options available with TNA, reportedly. One would be a guaranteed deal that would give them full control of their outside bookings, or another guaranteed deal where TNA would have to approve their outside bookings. Either way, while Matt and Jeff Hardy probably should go to the WWE one more time for their swan song, kind of like the Dudleys did, I gotta admit, TNA is probably the best fit for them now, especially with this broken Hardy's character, broken Matt Hardy, Brother Nero. I mean, that is gold, and that's single-handedly, and I've given them credit for it, and I've said it over and over again, Matt Hardy single-handedly is saving TNA. And now TNA has a new management, Anthem Sports and Entertainment. Dixie Carter is completely out of the equation now, evidently. Jeff Jarrett has been brought on as some sort of advisory role that should have no impact on Global Force Wrestling whatsoever if you follow that. So TNA is, I want to say, perhaps on the rebound. I still would like to see TNA get rid of the acronym TNA Wrestling, Total Nonstop Action Wrestling, and just completely rebrand themselves. But I guess one thing at a time. You know, either way, good on them. I hope TNA continues to grow and serve as another alternative. For those of you local folks, ESW presents Resolutions tonight. That's right, tonight, St. Johnsburg Fire Company in North Tonawanda. So go ahead, get your tickets there. They're scarce now at this point, so get in where you can fit in. But they got a full slate of action out there in the North Tonawanda region. The best wrestling promotion out there, honestly. Yeah, that's a shoot. I don't care. In the main event, you're going to see the ESW Heavyweight Championship on the line as Big Time Bill Collier takes on Trent. Silas Young versus Braxton Sutter, a.k.a. Pepper Parks. Kevin Bennett, the Kevin Bennett, against JT Dunn. For the ESW Tag Team Championships, you got the Rochester Wrecking Crew versus the Oliver Street Express. For the Interstate title, Coconut Jones is challenged by Cloudy and Anthony Gaines, formerly of the Homewreckers in IWF. Ron Falco against Big Cat Lemmer, Gregory Iron versus Inferno Johnny Adams, Vince Valor versus RJ City, Brandon Thurston versus Ricky Shane Page, the Patron Saints versus Colin Delaney, Frankie Feathers, and Cheech, and Alex Daniels against James Sega. Again, that is later tonight. Go see yourself some ESW wrestling action. And then you know what? Come on over east next Friday as IWF has Beat Down 2, which would be Friday the 27th. From Brockport Elks Lodge number 2110 at 4400 Sweden Walker Road. Brockport 14420. Go to facebook.com/TheIWF to see what they've got going on. But now there have been 2 matches announced. The first announcement was made. It is the Marla Hansen Invitational Royal Rumble. It's a traditional Rumble to commemorate a close friend of the IWF and the Western New York wrestling community that unfortunately passed away a year ago. She was a photographer, a mother to some, a trusted and loyal ally, an ear to listen to, an advice giver, but most importantly, a friend to most all of Western New York wrestling, especially over the past 15 plus years. I personally knew Marla, so it was a shock when she passed away last year. So I think it's a good on you, IWF. I'm glad that you're doing something to honor somebody who liked IWF and was a part of IWF as much as Marla was. They did announce that there's a mystery entrant in there. This person, according to the IWF Facebook page, is a former Rochester champion. He's well known and respected by all of his peers, and he will be making his return to the ring January 27th at IWF Beatdown 2. A lot of speculation there. I don't know who it is. I'm not going to be there. It's not me, so don't worry about that. But either way, you should go and take a look and see who it is. You never know what happens at IWF. Now, another match that was announced was a big 6-man tag team match. Big Cat Lemmer, Gavin Glass, and Ron Falco versus Tank Abrams, the Kevin Bennett, and Randy Philibrick. And then as well, the first inductee into the IWF Hall of Fame, none other than my man, my brother from another mother, Kid Justice, Art Bailey, a.k.a. I don't know. The guy's had a lot of characters, but Kid Justice was one of the ones he was most well known for. He was the very first IWF heavyweight champion and was among the best IWF had to offer, especially at the time of launch. He is what they consider the true meaning of an IWF original. So again, the Marla Hanson Memorial Battle Royal Rumble-ish, with a mystery person guest or two coming in. A big 6-man tag match, more to come as well. I'm sure we will get more match announcements between now, Saturday, and next week on Friday, because they usually announce matches on Mondays. So I'm sure we'll get another match announcement on Monday in between. However, Talking Wrestling will not be back until March or April, when the season begins, typically. So you're just going to have to go to their Facebook page to see. But definitely a show I highly recommend going to. And so, again, IWF, that is Friday the 27th. ESW is later today. And Talking Wrestling season premiere will be in either mid-March, late March, or early April. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to this special preseason edition of the Talking Wrestling podcast. I appreciate you listening in to my Jimmy Snuka story and to my broken up news here. Of course, after editing, it's going to sound very nice, but whatever. So thanks again for tuning in and listening. Go to ESW tonight, go to IWF next Friday night, and then enjoy the Royal Rumble the following Sunday. Until the next time we meet again, whether it's Football Talk Weekly or whether it's here on Talking Wrestling, this is John Cimino saying so long, everybody. Good night now. Safe home, Jimmy Snuka.
Superfly.
recognized symbol of excellence in sports entertainment.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.